right, guys. I think we're gonna start up. Cool. Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Adam. Part of the Pomona Student Union. We're a nonpartisan, completely student-run organization, trying to increase the level of open and honest dialogue on campus. So we put on these discussions and debates, hoping to present some new perspectives on issues that are important to the student body. And just to start off, I'd like to stress that these events are supposed to be important to you. That means we need input on what you want to see and what you want changed. I made that suggestion box in the back. I bled for it. And I would really love it if you guys put suggestions on the note cards and put them in. Every suggestion will be brought up in a PSU meeting, either as a revision to what's going on or as an idea for something new. So, to start off, a lot of my conversations at Pomona College have revolved around how differently each of us sees the world, how much goes unseen in terms of ingrained power dynamics. And in terms of when art is used to portray the world rather than sort of pure news, whatever that is, it seems an apolitical or objective vision is impossible. So keeping in mind how important perspective is, we ask, like, what's at stake when an artist portrays the world, and what happens when lines between entertainment and information are blurred? So we brought two incredible artists from very different backgrounds who have portrayed our world in very different ways. So Chad Coleman is a film, television, and theater actor. You might recognize him more from television. All right. He's been on Criminal Minds, Burn Notice, CSI, It's Always Sunny. You might have seen him in The Green Hornet or Horrible Bosses, but I think most people recognize him from his role as Cuddy for 4 years on HBO's The Wire. If you don't know, The Wire has been described by many critics as the greatest TV drama of all time, or one of them. It's praised for really tough, realistic portrayals of urban life in Baltimore, for its uncommonly deep exploration of socio-political themes, and it defied TV expectations for avoiding big-name stars in favor of trying to get a lot of local actors, Baltimore actors, in smaller roles, and for allowing unresolved storyline conflict, trying to get real faces, real voices of the city that it portrayed. So Lee Brewer is a MacArthur Genius Grant winning theater director and playwright. He's the founding artistic director of the critically acclaimed Mabou Mines Theater Company, that along with Bob Wilson and Richard Foreman and the Worcester Group really shaped and gave impetus to American avant-garde theater. He's famously tweaked and turned classic pieces with new politics. He directed Gospel at Colonus with black gospel singers in Sophocles' Tragedy, and he did a cross-gendered Lear. I thought relevantly, because we just saw Dollhouse, Lee twisted Henrik Ibsen's Dollhouse to put it in a literal dollhouse on small scale, where a cast of dwarf men acted alongside 6-foot-tall, statuesque women while they epitomized tyrannical, dominant males. So, that's enough from me. We have two artists creating politically charged visions of our world in really different and unique ways. We have Catherine Snell moderating, and we have you guys asking questions whenever you feel like asking questions. So yeah, thanks. Let's begin.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Catherine. I'm going to be moderating tonight's event, if you didn't already figure that out. We're going to begin with about an hour of prepared questions, and then we're going to open the floor to audience questions, so start thinking of those. Let's begin. 2013 brought with it a ton of conflict about Quentin Tarantino's purported slave narrative, Django Unchained. Many voiced concern with the fact that a white guy was directing this movie. Others lauded the work as a step forward in America's relationship with slavery. Speaking to experiences with race, class, and gender in your work, do people have ownership over certain concepts? On the flip side, if you have an affiliation with a concept, do you have a responsibility to make art about it? We'll start with Lee.
Sure. I'm gonna start with a point of view. God, for all my life, I just hated critics. And then I had a revelation, which was that artists are critics. And in a way, we're all rats in the same cage. And what I wanted to propose was an idea about looking at a piece of work where it's almost impossible to find out what's real, that what you're really looking at are subjective takes on a proposed reality in which you're saying, well, I think the world's that way, and I think the world's that way, and a critic will say, no, it's that way. The difference is that the critic doesn't have to do any art. The critic can just critique you, but the artist, in order to criticize, has to propose something new, has to make a new statement, a new idea, a new style. And in a sense, however, when you look at it from the top, it's the same idea. It's a war of concepts about reality itself. And this involves questions of style. Is realism reality? Well, I'm not quite so sure realism is reality. I think that realism is an agreement of all of us about what happens to be real. It's real if I drink a glass of water. But if I was upside down, would that be real? The water would spill, but maybe the water wouldn't spill. You never know in fantasy, okay? So I really feel that the point of view I'd like to forward and discuss is that we each have our subjective take on what's real, and we really believe in it deeply. And we either create criticism or we create art from that subjectivity. But in a sense, it's a debate. And it isn't always the critic who has the key to what's good. It's often an agreement, a public agreement, about what actually is good art. And curiously enough, what actually is good art is pretty subjective in its sense. Look at it this way. Suppose theater was half in your mind and half on the stage. Suppose you like something because you have a sense of who should win, how it should go, who is beautiful, who is ugly. And if what you're seeing from the stage projects anything close to what's in your mind, you like it. And if it is counter to what's in your mind, if somebody ugly considers himself beautiful, somebody short considers himself tall, and somebody white considers himself black, how real is that? Well, in art, one thing just might be as real as another. And what you're proposing is a new topic to agree on. Maybe reality really is upside down. I did a couple pieces where everything was in midair. Everybody flew, everybody was on ropes and wires and this and that. Scenes were staged upside down. People walked right around a proscenium this way. And somehow, I ultimately felt that the surrealism of this piece was realer than reality itself. It's not that I don't like reality. I love great realistic acting, and I love great realistic staging. However, I just hope that you can consider realism and your lives and just the idea that you're all sitting there as a style. And it could be in another style. You could all be sideways, 90 degrees this way. You could all be reverse gender. And the artist says, maybe we should look at things that way.
So, Lee, if I understand you correctly, if art is a war of concepts, then would you argue that there is no ownership over certain concepts, that it's free range, that Quentin Tarantino is free to make Django Unchained?
To a point, but I know that Chad and I agree that that point is a dangerous point. Because, for example, if people insult gender, if they insult race, if they propose a concept that they're not qualified to propose, then you're dealing on very, very touchy ground, and you have to take the consequences. And I think that Quentin is a very, very good subject matter to discuss here. In some ways, he is brilliant. In some ways, he's playing too much of a game. And I think that it's a very complex issue.
Chad?
Wow. Damn, man. I don't even want to speak now. Okay. Well, for me, the initial encounter with Django was actually the audition process. You know, everybody was running around and trying to get an audition for that movie. And then, and I never got a chance to read the script. And then the next thing that happened was, for me, that jumped out, Spike Lee is like, I'm not seeing that movie. And then the whole idea of a kind of white person direct, you know, this subject matter, where, you know, at the end of the day, the story is black and white. It is. So, but it's that, again, you say, okay, now, but what perspective are you speaking from? So I'll take it back to when I was doing the play. August Wilson, an amazing playwright, wrote in his will that he did not want a white director to ever direct his plays. He passed away. His widow said, Bartlett Chair, I want you to direct the play. So there was a big brouhaha in New York about that. Now, my take on it was that we're storytellers, and the human experience, part of it, you know, yes, you have specific things that can be germane to a culture, but as the surgeons, as the human behavior surgeons that we are, I don't say that a white person can't. Now, it's not going to be a dictatorship. I'm black. I'll be in the room with Bart, you know, and I'll speak to things that if Bart had an idea, just like what Lee's saying, you know, that we should all, you know, get on the kitchen table and eat biscuits, you know, then I'm going to talk to him about the culture I grew up in, where you better not put your ass on that table, you better not put a hat on that table, you know, and these came from a very long lineage of our people who shared these ideas that carried forth. So it was, I don't have an issue with Quentin directing it. I just say, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to handle this? And if you can't walk in my shoes as an African-American male, can you sympathize, empathize, find a way to, I don't know, I don't want to say protect, but just be incredibly, I would say, I need a sensibility. I needed a sensibility. I don't mind this. You have a right to tell whatever story you choose to tell. And the fact that you chose this subject matter, okay, I get it. But now I go to the theater and I watch the movie. And I mean, I just, at the end, I had so many thoughts and feelings running through me, you know, and it makes me have to examine myself in a lot of ways. So I said, for me, I'm not really comfortable. I had a great time. I was at an arcade inside the theater. I was in an arcade, right? But we don't live in a bubble. And I couldn't help but think about what would happen if this movie was shown to young African Americans in Chicago. The idea of eye for an eye, for me, as an African American male, has never worked in my life. I end up facing 10 times more conflict and struggle trying to live my life in an eye for an eye kind of way. Gratuitous violence, just the notion of the way to resolve conflict is to shoot someone is kind of old, you know? And so from a social standpoint, I was thinking about those kids, and I said, you know, I know they're gonna get bootleg copies of this, and so what do we perpetuate? Now, for him, as a white male, what it appeared, you know, he has every right to take on this subject matter. But the way that he did it was problematic for me, because it was way too simplified. The issue of race and slavery in this country is, as Lee said, is incredibly complex. So I'd rather see someone take on this story from that perspective. I don't think there was anything to learn in our society from this movie. I really don't. You're a fantastic filmmaker, great. You could have chosen another subject and, you know, did your whole pinball machine deal, and, you know, we could walk away and probably not have two or three words to say. But then I thought, if an African American had directed this film, I think there would have been an incredible amount of backlash, because I believe, just personally, my feeling is my community, the African American community, would have felt, you know, it was an affront. It was like, how could you go and make this kind of salacious, you know, kind of like drippingly violent film at a time in this country when we're wrestling with so many issues like that. Now, if you're gonna do that, I just say, are you as an artist willing to stand on the front line and talk about it? Are you willing as an artist outside of the work to try to somehow implement something in some of these, you know, hoods and communities across the country to foster something in a young child that they don't identify with Django as a hero? Because to me, I think it's a dead end. I think it's what's already happening. You're in jail or you're dead. So I couldn't shake, you know, I could not shake that. And then when I hear these whisperings about Quentin thinking he's black just because his stepfather was African American, you know, and you watched a lot of so-called black exploitation flicks, you know, I just have issues with it. And I just wonder if he's willing to have a real mature conversation about it. Not the guy from the video store who wants to just live in his own world. And that's a responsibility that goes beyond Quentin Tarantino, of course. Many others have made, but I have not seen a movie like this, you know. I don't know if we're ready, I mean, we were ready for Dave Chappelle. You know, and
we'll get there in a minute.
Okay, but I don't know that we were. I don't know that I found anything incredibly. I don't know if I just want to be entertained by that issue. You know, didn't work for me.
So on the flip side, at dinner you described a childhood that didn't seem so far from what you ended up portraying in The Wire. Did you feel a responsibility to make art about those experiences? You know, Quentin doesn't come from the background that he is portraying in his movie. Did you feel a responsibility to portray the background that you did come from?
Well, the beautiful part about The Wire is it was created by, and I really don't, white, black, it's a perspective, you know, has nothing to do with race. It's, you know, you can't go to black, you can't go to white, you know, we all come from specific places, so, you know, I just throw that out there. But yeah, it was a great, I know young black males in the hood who come out of incarceration who want desperately to move on with their lives in a different way. I know these guys, they wear a veil. You can't reach them. You can't talk to them. it's always the wall is up because they're angry, they're confused, they're frustrated, there's a lot of self-hate and things of this nature going on. So when I was able to portray the role of Cuddy, and I would walk down the street, and all of a sudden, African-American males who would not speak to me, all of a sudden started to open up, started to show a vulnerability, started to be able to just share that, man, thank you for taking this on. This is my life, man. So from that standpoint, yeah, I felt, and the majority of African-American males, as you all know, the penal system is inundated. So that's a lot of their story. And so I was grateful that I could collaborate with David and Ed and the rest of those amazing writers and be able to hand something back to the community that I think we could work with. Don't want to overplay the hand of art. The real worker bees are in the communities, trying to affect the change that's necessary. But yeah, if I can have a small hand in that by honestly portraying what that life is like, it meant a lot to me.
Great. So let's get to Dave Chappelle then.
Yeah.
When he discovered that the Chappelle Show's audience was largely suburban and largely white, he reacted pretty adversely, as we all know. So once you see how your audience responds and who they are, how does that change the way that you feel about or do your work? To what standard can you hold your audience when you're making a social commentary? Lee?
I'm going to tip back a second back to Django and also talk about this. Well, you take two reactions. We have very rock and roll reactions. You get a lead singer and you know the lead singer is working with an energy that I hate everybody out there, or love me, love me, love me, love me, love me. And it's down to one or the other. And these enormously strong, motivating emotions, I think, dictates the artist's position also. I think, I kind of agree with Chad completely on this. I think that Quentin, well, let me tell you a little story. I'm a lot older than Quentin, and when I was 15, an enormously important thing happened. The hit parade changed. 1 week, Perry Como was #1, and the week after, #1 was the Crows, Shaboom. Okay? Now, music and the hit parade switched from white to black. And everybody white around it, this was in the 50s, the early 50s. And everybody that I was going to high school with suddenly decided to be black was sexy. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew. And then black athletes started taking over professional sports. And black singers started taking over music. And pretty soon, black aesthetics, black dress, black culture started, particularly in New York, started taking over white culture. People changed the way they dressed. People changed the way they wore their hair. And the idea of what was hip changed race in a little bit. And I suspect that the complication with somebody like Quentin is that doing a film like this, taking these dangerous paths, was a kind of a desperate attempt to be sexy. And that it kind of flipped back on you. You can go to a point where it's just not sexy, it's ugly. And it's just not sexy, it's dangerous. It's where everybody goes that half step too far. And so I really concur with Chad on this. I think that there is danger in that film, social danger and community danger. And I think, yeah, you show it in Chicago, you show it in Africa, you show it in black communities, and someone's going to want to be Django and open up and kill 80 people on the screen. And it doesn't matter to them that it's a send-up of peck and paw, Wild West scene, where everybody dies in slow motion. That's a subtlety that passes everybody. It's the idea that strength, power, and violence and sexuality all locked together, and the metaphor for this is an Afro-American culture that's a complete myth. When I started working with Gospel Colonists, and I started working with members of the Pentecostal Church, which I have for 30 years, and lived in virtually a black community and toured with a black company, I never felt more love, and I never felt more warmth, and I never felt more support than I had with this particular company. It was the other side of the coin. But that's not the hood. It's these two balanced things. It's the warrior culture and the church culture. And I think that Quentin bought the warrior culture, and that it's just a kind of a wannabe take. And I think that's a little bit dangerous. In fact, I think it's quite dangerous. So I'd have to.
It's an easy out. It's easy to do that, as opposed to taking it on, you know. I mean, that's really, it's, if you look at the movie, obviously, it's regressive.
Yeah.
You know? And we've seen, I mean, in real life, we have seen African Americans, not, it didn't start that way, but if you take a look at the Black Panthers, you take a look at the ideology and rhetoric of a Malcolm X prior to, you know, his continued growth. And you'll find that eye for an eye deal. It didn't work. It doesn't work. You don't ride off into the sunset with your lady, both of y'all armed. It doesn't happen, you know? So it's just, it's a powder keg that I just don't think, you know, I don't really feel like, you know, I just don't feel like we were ready for that. Now, you said Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
And
Audience.
were we ready for Dave Chappelle? Was Dave Chappelle ready for Dave Chappelle? Once again, it doesn't happen in a bubble. So I was really compelled because both of Dave's parents, I believe, are professors. And so what felt like an identity crisis for him, some level of meltdown, you know, what he was up against on one level was Oprah and Bill Cosby and people of this nature calling him up saying, what the hell are you doing? And that was their comment, we're not ready for this. But that wasn't the experience that I was having with it, you know. Race is absurd, you know. And I thought the way that he handled it actually spoke to that in a very smart way. Not just this gratuitous, like, just getting off on myself, you know, that I you know, felt the sense of with Quentin. I just did, and that was just my own experience. But I always thought Dave Chappelle was very, very sharp. But at the same time, when he said that these people are laughing at me, they're not laughing with me. And so he began to feel the pangs. You know, no amount of 30 million from Half-Baked, no amount of notoriety in the world could stop that thing that he felt inside that was like a rejection.
So an artist is ultimately connected to their audience.
Totally.
Yes, we don't. It really, in a lot of ways, is not for us. You know, if I don't act in the closet, you know, it's just, you know what I'm saying? If that's all I wanted, you know, if it's not for you, you know, or if there isn't some strange collaboration or relationship or a call and response, if you will, if that's not inherent in it, then, you know, on one level, it's like, what's the point of critics and what's the point, you know?
Yeah. You know, it's a lot like your search. You're looking around and you say, do you hear what I'm saying? Does he hear what I'm saying?
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? You got anything to tell me? I got something I want to tell you. Oh, you don't want to hear? Okay, well, I'll tell him.
Right.
I'll tell her. And you look one by one. You build your audience one by one. You know, you say, well, I got this thing I'm putting out. I got this energy. You like it, you don't like it. You know, it's very, you know, it's very erotic in a way. You go there and you say, this is me, are you gonna take me? No? Okay, well, I will be defensive and fuck you. Or you take me, I love you. Whoa, come back, come back. You know, it gets down to the basics. It really does get down to the basics, and you build your audience by trying to connect with people one by one in real time, not on the tube, not with photos, not with this, not with a narcissistic presentation of yourself,
right.
not with something that you know, brush stroked and put together and change the color of the photo, and that.
Right.
But it's like you sitting there, you know, are you with me? And somehow that's the way these audiences are built. And little by little, all the way through your life, it can take 10, 15, or 20 years, you start to build a connection to the people that hear you. And they seek you out, and you seek them out. And so you want to put together a unified collective of people with a point of view that, well, it's like you got faith in each other.
So let's talk about standards for our audience briefly. To what standard do we hold our partner in this erotic relationship? How much can we ask of them? I mean, I'm thinking about The Wire and how complex the messages are there. If one goes in kind of unprepared, watching those seasons, will they get the wrong message? Does The Wire require a sophisticated audience in order for it to reap kind of positive results?
Well, the style in and of itself was one that requires, you know, that you pay attention. There's not going to be any commercial break and McDonald's and cars are getting sold, you know. It's not an episode of Law and Order where it's a nice little fixed little package deal. And so you're going to find out a lot about yourself, you know, but what it comes down to that, what do you want? You know, the Wire audience to me was looking, authenticity mattered, you know, for whatever degree that you felt like you were experiencing something unique and honest and sincere and not manipulated and not Hollywoodized, you know, that's what I think, you know, most Wire audience. And I found that some of the obscurity of it it helped to form relationships. You know, boyfriends and girlfriends who knew what was happening could say, well, no, you missed it. This is what that means. This is what's happening. And so people were finding a way to either affirm notions about a particular culture or learn, or it was a fascination to somehow be able to connect and identify, you know. So, but then it's not the same with every audience. There are many in the African American community, half of which never watched the show, saying, I'm not watching that. It's the same old hood stuff. I don't want to see that anymore. You know, I grew up with that. It's like, well, you haven't watched the show.
So, Lee, how much do you expect out of your audience?
Yeah.
Boy, everything I can get. You know, talking about The Wire a little bit and talking about, you know, a major subject at our time, you know, drug culture. I think that it might be interesting to start to see the connection between junkies and artists. In a way, one is a cartoon of the other, but they're the same. They're really the same. And an artist is an addict. It just doesn't shoot up with the same stuff. It shoots up with the energy that you get back from somebody liking your work, somebody trusting your point of view, and it makes you high. It really changes your life around, and it stabilizes you, and you feel like you can dominate the world, and you feel like everybody loves you, and then of course you crash and you have to start all over again and say, well, who loves me? But I really feel that the audience, in a way, has the drug that the artist wants, which is acceptance, which is love, and that the artist needs this desperately and is hustling for it all the time, and gets very angry and pissed off when they don't get it. And so I think of Tennessee Williams a little bit. I mean, there was a guy who, his audience made him a wealthy, made him a millionaire. He had 5 or 6 absolutely brilliant successes on Broadway. And then he came out and he started talking about, the style that he really wanted to write in, which was much more abstract, which was crazier. He started writing gay characters like Felice into character plays and stuff like that, and the critics hated him, and they hated him for 20 years. And he wrote 20 or 30 plays that they dumped on that you probably never heard of, and then they killed him. And that was very possibly our greatest American playwright. And so the audience has this incredible power, like a drug, that it can make you and break you. And so it's an intricate symbiosis, a very intricate one, but so exciting that once you're hooked on an interaction with the audience, you just don't break that habit.
Well, personally for me, it started out, the first time I knew that I really wanted to be an actor. Well, you train, right? And they teach you a technique, and they teach you to use things from your personal life, which is a